House Bill 1083, which has just been introduced into the state legislature for the second time. It failed the first time. And that is a bill to allow faculty members and students who have a concealed weapons permit and have additional firearms training to allow them to have their concealed weapons on campus. This would be a change in the law.
I teach policy analysis, and a lot of times when we look at law, the laws are highly symbolic. That something comes up like a school shooting or something, a campus shooting, and there's a call or a cry to do something about it. And this particular bill, I really would like to look at the statistics of what kind of problems that this is actually solving, because it's actually very, very rare that we would actually have a campus shooting. So I do think I agree with David, there's an emotional gut response that most people have that we try to train policy analysts not to have that emotional response. And the logic here, kind of talk on the other side, the logic here that these people come on campus, well, they can come on campus now with weapons. So I'm not sure, not having the law, what that would prevent. And kind of remind David too, about the ex-military people. When he said that, I got thinking about Timothy McVeigh was an ex-military person, so that's not really a guarantee that anybody who has a weapon is going to be safe with it.
ASCU has a good study that they put out, the American Association of State Colleges and Universities, and they've kind of outlined a few facts regarding legislation. And what it appears to be is kind of an opportunistic measure taken by gun rights advocates groups. It's not just Oklahoma. I believe there are 17 states that have introduced legislation, and since January of 2007, I think they've all failed in committee except for Oklahoma, where it passed in the House and it failed in the Senate. Same thing with South Dakota. Basically, I think the gun rights advocates group saw an opportunity to try to further expand gun rights, and what better place to do it than on college campuses. ASCU, as well as a lot of people associated with universities, tend to be against it. They contradict arguments that are made about deterrence. One of the arguments is that if people realize what's the maxim that an armed society makes for a polite society or something, they tend to contradict that there is a deterrent effect. That if psychotic people know that there are law-abiding citizens with concealed weapons around them, that they'd be less likely to commit crimes. And what their argument is that typically if someone wants to commit mass murders on campus, they're not going to be deterred by concealed weapons around them. That's the point, is to kill people and possibly die. So the deterrent argument doesn't work. The other argument that ASCU makes is regarding whether or not people that have a permit to carry a concealed weapon, whether or not they're actually trained to prevent anything if there was an armed student that would start shooting. And the conclusion, and I'm sure you can probably find people that would say otherwise, but ASCU, their position based upon people that they've interviewed with and their experts, basically say that it makes an already dangerous situation more dangerous, in that even though somebody's licensed to have a concealed weapon, that doesn't mean that they're trained for this kind of security incident. If they're not trained to stop an armed gunman, and that the resulting chaos and shooting the wrong person and all of that can actually hinder college campus security. So for that and a number of other reasons I won't get into, the ASCII report is the groups that represent state colleges and universities pretty much overwhelmingly are against it. So I think what we have here is a bill that is introduced by, it's kind of a concerted effort by gun rights advocates, not supported by universities themselves, as I think of the 23 states, 26 states, state law prohibits guns on public college campuses, even for people that have obtained concealed weapons. Only one, Utah, prohibits state institutions from borrowing guns on campus. 23 states allow public campuses or state systems to determine their own weapons policies, with nearly all choosing to be gun-free. So the universities themselves tend not to be in favor of it. I think what we have here again is kind of gun rights advocates wanting to expand the right of gun ownership, and being kind of encouraged by the recent Supreme Court opinion, which did state that there is an individual rights protection for individual handgun owners.
Opponents of this bill always point their finger at the NRA, but Students for Concealed Carry on Campus, a national organization, was started by survivors of Virginia Tech, nonprofit grassroots organization. Yes, the NRA does support it, but they didn't come up with the idea. It was mentioned earlier that deterrents don't work for suicidal gunmen. Well, that's right. No one can stop that first bullet from being fired, but if we can stop the second, the third, the 32nd student from being killed, that's what concealed carry on campus could do. And Edmond is extremely safe town. UCO is an extremely safe college. Not all universities are that way. If concealed carry on campus could stop other things, beatings, rapes, armed robberies, things like that, that's great. But in that unlikely possibility that a school shooter were to come on campus, that's what this bill is about, to save lives. Maybe not save the first or second person to be killed, but save the rest.
Do we have any numbers to compare between campuses that do have this ban and campuses that don't, to look to see if there's any statistically significant increase or decrease in gun-related violence?
As I stated earlier, after Utah legislature passed the law mandating all 9 of their public universities to require it, and Colorado State once it implemented it in 2003, and Bluestem Community College in Virginia in 1995, they haven't had any gun-related incidents, whether accidental shootings or intentional shootings on their campuses. They haven't had any gun-related suicides, and no guns have been stolen out of cars, out of dorm rooms, out of people's pockets, like some opponents will try to argue. None of this has happened.
True, but it could also be that, there was no gun problem beforehand. Just looking at
Thomas, if I could answer just once again, I think the events are so rare that to look for statistically significant difference, there's no way to do it.
I attended the hearing at the state legislature last year, at the state legislature. And at that hearing was the UCO president, Roger Webb, OSU president, Dan Boren, OU president, and a whole bunch of other college presidents. And pretty much every single one of them, including the chancellor of higher education in Oklahoma, has come out against this bill very, very strongly. Also attending that meeting were the state police. And the state police also argues against this bill. And they argue against this bill for basically the fact that if a state policeman were to come on campus when they know that there's been an armed shooting event, or an incident as they call it, how do they tell who is the bad guy and who is the good guy, basically? How do they tell who is the concealed weapons permit holder and who is the person that's shooting people on campus? At least with UCO police, or trying to encourage police presence, or having student safety people walk around, that may be a better way, they've argued, to go about encouraging safety, as opposed to having people with concealed weapons, because they don't know who the bad guy is and who the good guy is. And as one of the state policemen said at the hearing, you know, I don't want to shoot a concealed weapons holder if that person isn't the person that committed the crime. But I would have no way of knowing. And our first instinct, as he's put it, is to shoot. That's our first instinct. When we know that when we see a gun and we know that there's been an incident on campus, our first instinct is to assume that that person is the bad guy. If you're a concealed weapons holder, you might want to think about that, because that's at least the state police position, and they were very adamant that they did not want this bill to pass.